here today to do a book tag. This is the Totally Should Have book tag. I found it through a couple of different channels, but it is said to have started with Emmmabooks. I'll include a link below for her video. And it is 11 questions about what totally should have happened with books I love, books I hated, and in general, just books I've read. The first one is, what book totally should have gotten a sequel? In my opinion, this would be Descendant of the Crane by Joan He. I have read somewhere that there is a second book coming out, but it's more of a companion novel for this rather than a direct sequel. And I definitely would have preferred a direct sequel versus just a companion novel, because the way it ended really made me want to have more resolution. Number 2 is this book totally should have gotten a spin-off series. For me, this one would be World War Z. Max Brooks did write a companion novel, although it's almost more like the files of kind of a paranoid survivalist in regards to zombie war and the history of zombies in our civilization, and it's very interesting. But with how the first book was written, there were so many stories, and the scale with which it gives you based on the fact that it's all these different stories from around the world, I feel like there were so many more stories that could have been told. And for that reason, I think it would have been really great to get a spin-off series, have, some books that focus more on a specific continent or focus more on like the direct plans and in-depth plans to deal with the zombies and how to save humanity. There was just so much story to tell. And even though I think World War Z did a really good job of telling it, the fact that there are so many more stories out there, I think really would have justified having another book in that universe. My third one is, name an author who should totally write more books. This one, I'm gonna say any author that can. Like, I don't have a specific author where I'm really angry about the frequency with which the books comes out, because I feel like the length of time they put into the book is what they feel they need, and what the editing and stuff team feels is kind of needed for each book, because I don't want them trying to rush a book out just to get it out, because if I enjoyed the book, I thought it was high quality, and I feel like give them as much time as necessary. So, I mean, like, any author that can put out more books can put out more books, but like, I don't have a specific author I want to call out because I just don't. Question 4, a character who should have ended up with someone else. I'm gonna go to the Diviners series. I've only listened to the first book. I do intend to get to the other ones at some point, but I've had a very hard time getting to the second book because the main character, Evie, is just very hard for me to read. She is super immature, super spoiled, super selfish, and just like reckless on a level that is dangerous to everyone around her for the type of world that they live in. And at the end of the first book, she has this minor romance scene with Jericho, and it's kind of implied that they will go forward as a couple, at least for a little while, and Jericho does not deserve to end up with Evie. Everything about him speaks to a really nice guy who deserves someone who can appreciate that, not someone who is willing to put their own wants and desires so far beyond everybody else's that she puts everyone, not just herself, but everyone in danger. And that's the big thing with Evie that I really don't like. And hopefully that changes, because Jericho deserves better, and hopefully I'll read the series and it'll get more expanded upon, but for now, that's what I'm going with. Question 5 is, what series totally should have ended differently? For me, nothing specific comes to mind. I know I've had a few books where I've been like, oh, I could have done something a little bit different with the ending here, or the ending was a little bit rushed, but I haven't really disliked an ending so much that I'd want to rewrite it completely. And because of that, I don't really have one for this question. 6, which book totally should have had a movie franchise? My answer for this one is the Ender's Game series. And hold on. I know it has a movie. It has a single movie with the first book. But I really, really enjoy the rest of the series. And because of that, I think it would be way, way effective to have more movies from that series come forward, or even if you wanted to go back and do like the first 4 Mick Wars as a prequel option, because I've recently started reading those and I'm really loving them. But yeah, the Ender's Game series, it did the first movie. It wasn't an amazing adaptation, but they did a really good job with the time limits they had, and I think that The Speaker of the Dead, at least, would make a really good addition into a movie franchise surrounding this series. Question 7, which book totally should have had a TV show? And this one I'm gonna say World War Z. Why World War Z, do you ask? Because of how it's set up. It's set up perfectly that each interview in the book could be an episode. You start in the interview seat, you start with where the interview starts, and then you do the flashbacks as the rest of the episode. It would be so perfect, and it would be so much better than the movie. Because the World War Z movie was good, like it wasn't bad, but it did not do justice to the style of story that World War Z is in the novel. And because of that, in order to really do it justice, I think a TV show, or even just a TV miniseries, would be the perfect way to do that novel. And if you want to hear a little bit more about it, you can find my reviews, I think, for the movie and for the book earlier on in my channel, where I rant kind of at length about how much I wanted it to be a TV show. So if you're interested, click on those. I'll include maybe a link for one of them in the drop. Question 8, which book totally should have had a single point of view? For me, this one, I'm going to say No Time for Goodbye. Not so much that it necessarily needed to be a single point of view. It was mostly from a single point of view. However, there were these weird like chapter intros and outros that were from the view of like the villain, like the person who was committing these crimes and disturbing this family. Based on everything else that was happening, I felt like that was super unnecessary and just added length to the book without adding a lot of substance. So I would say cut those. Question 9, which book totally should have had a cover change? Honestly, I couldn't actually come up with this one. I mean, I think Ready Player One probably could have come up with something a little bit more interesting. They had a lot to work with. It's not a terrible cover, but... Question 10, which book should have kept the original covers? And my answer for this is every single book that had a movie adaptation and they released movie tie-in covers. Because maybe there are nice movie tie-in covers out there, but as far as I have seen, every movie adaptation that has resulted in new covers being released for the book is pretty terrible, and I don't like them. And please stop. Which leads me into my last question. Which book totally should have stopped at book number 1? And for me, for this, I'm actually going to go with one. It's called Updraft. It's by Fran Wilde. It was an interesting kind of like, almost like a sci-fi fantasy mix. It was a bit of it was a post-apocalyptic book that just had some very interesting things going on in its world. They live in these bone towers. The bone towers are constantly growing, and as they're growing, different parts are filling in, and so everybody just shifts up every so many years. They fly between towers, and each tower is almost like its own city or town or colony, and it's very interesting. But I don't think they needed to make it a series. I've read the first and second books. I think there's a third that I probably won't get to. The first book was pretty good, and the second book, honestly, you could have just lengthened the third book a little bit, but as it stands right now, I think the first 2 books really could have been a slightly longer first book and been satisfactory. And with that, that's all I got today. For anybody interested in doing the Totally Should Have book tag, I will include the questions in the description below. And for anybody interested, I will include the original video, as I said earlier, from Emmmabooks for what she did if you're interested in seeing that as well. And with that, I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!